Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the tour hacking workshop. I'm gonna wait for a couple minutes just to let people kind of filter in here. I see Christian Martinez. How's it going, man? I see the thumbs up.
Good, bro.
Awesome, cool. So it's gonna be my first time hosting a workshop like this. So it's gonna be a little bit of trial and error. We'll see. But the fact that you're there, I could hear you all right. It seems like everything's working all right. So I think we're in a good place. I'm gonna go ahead and mute everyone just because when there's like a bunch of people come in here, it's gonna be really loud. So I'm gonna mute, and then we'll do a session where people can unmute and ask questions and stuff.
Cool.
Boom. So first of all, thank you. Welcome to the tour hacking workshop. So basically, the premise, the point, the reason I'm doing this is to help you. And help musicians who are kind of at the place where, they've played some shows, they have some good quality music, maybe you've played locally and you started to like cultivate a little bit of a fan base. But you're kind of at the place now where you're looking to expand your reach and to branch out a little bit. Maybe you want to do some touring regionally and nationally, or maybe you just want to bring new people to your shows because you've played a lot of shows to your friends and your family. And you really appreciate them because it's, incredible that they can support you like that. But at the same time, maybe you're starting to feel like you need some new people to come out and you don't want to like take advantage of the exact same people coming out to your shows all the time. So by the end of this workshop, you're going to have a really clear model and strategy that my band used when we were first starting out. We were in the exact same place, probably even worse because we grew up in South Dakota and there was like not a lot of people there in the first place, or like we didn't have very many mentors. So we used it and we ended up selling 24,000 CDs in the course of a few months. And it completely changed me as a person and it completely changed our music career. And we ended up touring with our favorite bands. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the training. So what are some of the exact things you're going to get from joining this workshop? One, like we already mentioned, you're going to go from playing shows locally to kind of a smaller fan base. You're going to learn how you can expand your fan base and how you can tour regionally and nationally, how you can book shows in other cities when right now you might not necessarily have a fan base there. And one of your biggest questions might be like, is it worth playing those shows if I don't already have a fan base? How do I cultivate a fan base if I don't already, if I don't have the fans already to play the shows? You're also going to learn how to improve your social media presence. And you're actually going to get real followers. A lot of training online nowadays tries to get you to buy like fake followers and fake streams and stuff. And you spend, one of the biggest mistakes I see musicians make is they spend a lot of money on trying to get more streams or trying to buy, advertisements on Facebook when, it's not at the place that you're at, it's just not worth it. Like you're just going to spend a lot of money and you're not going to get a whole lot in return. You're not going to get a lot of great results because you need to be able to make a real connection. And it's just hard to do that when the first time you meet someone is through, a Facebook ad. They're just going to kind of click through. So you're going to learn how to actually make a connection, how to actually build up your social media numbers in a way that's engaging. And have you ever seen those social media accounts where it's like a musician, it's like, oh, they have 100,000 likes, but then like you look on their profile and, they get like 5 likes on each of their posts and you're like, something's not adding up here. That's just like a clear indicator that they aren't real, fans. They just probably bought likes. And honestly, like that might kind of make you feel good on the surface, but then it doesn't do anything for your music career. It's not going to sustain you. You're not going to be able to monetize your music like that. So you're going to learn how to actually generate a good social media presence. And you're going to learn how to actually, make enough money to be able to support yourself and to invest back into your music. Because, I know personally, like that was one of our biggest challenges. Like when we first started out, we worked full-time jobs at like grocery stores just to like invest into our first album. And, as unfortunate as it is, like we need to have money to invest in the right things. Like, you can invest a lot of money in the wrong things. It won't do a whole lot for your music career, but there are certain things that you really need to get locked in. Like you really want to have high quality music. You want to work with really great producers. You want to be able to do tours. And to do that, you want to have some sort of income. And I know it's kind of hard when you're in the early stages. You're kind of like, how do I generate that income early on? And this training that I'm going to give you is going to show you exactly how we did that and how you can do that too. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with my story with Paradise Fears and like who we are as a band, basically, I graduated high school about 7 years ago, and right out of high school, we decided that we wanted to, start playing music professionally because we had started the band in high school. And before that, I was thinking about being a dentist and going to medical school. So obviously, my parents were like really excited when they heard that I was going to be, a musician instead of a dentist, because that's, such a safe option. But we really struggled at first because we played a lot of shows to the exact same people. We played to our friends and our family, and we really appreciated it. But we wanted to learn, how could we actually tour, and how could we get on tour with like, our favorite bands? We were huge All Time Low fans, Mayday Parade, the Somerset, the Cab. That was sort of like who we grew up listening to, and they were like our idols. And so for a while, like we tried booking our own shows, and we would like play them out of state. We would kind of try trading with other bands. And gotta make sure, got everything muted. We will have like a Q&A session and stuff. I'm going to do a lot of little check-ins. So we will make this interactive. But okay, so when we first started, we would do a lot of trades with like other bands, and it still didn't work out very well. We would play shows with like maybe 5 or 10 people. There were 6 of us in the band, so food, like we literally would eat like peanut butter tortillas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because it was just like really cheap and the best that we could afford. We were still losing money like on the tours, and the thing that kind of changed everything around for us was this thing that we called tour hustling. And tour hustling is kind of like the main component, it's the main strategy of this tour hacking workshop, and it's what I'm going to teach you guys how to do. And basically this idea came from our lead singer, Sam. And he got this idea from the band Mayday Parade. He heard that they were doing it at a festival called Warped Tour. And basically what they had done is they would approach people around Warped Tour who were walking around, and they would meet them, they would introduce themselves, and they would have some headphones, and then they would share some clips of their music. And if the people liked the music, then they would, pull out a CD, and they would say, hey, if you're interested, we have these CDs. And apparently it worked really well for them. So we decided that we were going to give it a shot. And so there were 6 of us in the band. So we split up into groups of 2, and we started following, bigger bands' tours around the country. One of them was like All Time Low. One of them was the Ready Set. One of them was We the Kings, and they were like, huge influences to us. We loved those bands. And before each show, they would have thousands of fans waiting outside, just waiting to go inside. And so what we did is we would walk up to them. I would have a pair of headphones. And I actually had like a pair that would split, so like 2 people could listen at the same time. And I would basically introduce myself. I would ask if they were interested in listening to some more songs, and I would have like 20, 30-second song clips. They would listen to them. If they liked them, I would offer a CD. So when we first started doing that, I was completely terrified. And I remember I was like a super shy kid in high school. Like I was not a cool kid. I was like a pretty big dork. And so the idea of like meeting strangers like that and asking them to listen to my music and selling my CDs just was like really scary to me. And also it's one thing to talk about it, but when you're actually like there and you're getting ready to like walk up to people like that, there's this really irrational fear that kind of comes up. It doesn't really matter unless you're super outgoing, which I was not. So it took like a lot of guts to start doing it. But what I realized is that the people I talked to, they actually, they're fans of the same band as I was. And we actually had a lot in common. And, our music was a really good fit for them. So we actually really connected. And at the end of it, after the first times I had to kind of stumble through it, and I embarrassed myself a lot when we first started doing it. But over time, I started kind of figuring out how to position myself in a way that I could introduce myself and I could connect with them and make like a real genuine connection. Actually, I figured out how I could be more comfortable in my own skin and tell our story, and how to actually sell the CD in a way that wasn't like spammy or pushy, but was just like genuine and actually led to people wanting to support us. And long story short, we ended up selling 24,000 CDs doing that. And that completely changed our entire career, because it was 24,000 CDs. That's like a lot of money that we could invest back into our music. And one of the bands we were doing it on was called All Time Low. And they were like our biggest idols back then. And they heard about what we were doing, and they decided to actually bring us on tour with them. And from that was like a huge, mind-blowing moment for me, because I think part of me was kind of afraid that, I don't know, that maybe the bands wouldn't approve of what we were doing, or that they would think that we were like stealing their fans, or that, that they just wouldn't like us for some reason. And I realized, like, as we did that, when we met the bands, they actually really admired what we were doing. It was the same with the people in line too. I think they kind of realized that it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there like that. And so really what it did for me too, is it kind of helped me overcome my shyness, helped me overcome my fear of rejection. And I kind of realized, like, it's okay if not everybody likes me. And it's okay if, like, if I talk to someone and they just say no, like, I'm not interested, like, don't talk to me. Then I would be like, okay, time to move on to the next person. One of the benefits of doing that too is, when we met those people online, they're not just kind of like, when you try to advertise on Facebook or social media and you're trying to get new fans, a lot of times, those people aren't necessarily quote unquote super fans. They're not necessarily the people that actually go out to shows, and people who just like love music and it's part of their, their bloodstream, and that they really appreciate it. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard, especially when you're first starting out, to like try to, make an income just through online stuff, because a lot of those people, it's just really hard to cut through the noise, first of all, and to find the right people who are actually going to support you and come out to shows. Like, if your goal is touring, yeah, it's just really hard to find that online. Where in contrast, when we were doing this, this tour hacking, we were meeting the exact right people. There were people who are already at shows, they're already spending money, they're waiting in line for the show, like they're super fans, and they're awesome. They're people that we connected with almost instantly. And I think that's one of the reasons that it worked so well. It's because we were meeting the right people. And the people that we met is just such a more direct form of connection. I think ultimately what you're going to find with your music is that in like your music career and your fans, the most important thing is going to be the connection with your fans. Like, always, ultimately, the one thing that drives your success as a musician is your connection with your fans. So then the question becomes, how can we best connect with them? And I think that doing that process, like meeting people face to face, it creates such a more direct form of connection. And all those people that you meet, they remember you. Like, that's not an experience that they have very often, compared to people who are just like scrolling through Facebook on their news feed. Actually meeting you face to face and connecting with you. And then, if later on, then you start to integrate some of these advanced marketing strategies with internet marketing, then you can actually follow up and reach out just to those people that you met in line. And once you're doing that, then you're not spending, thousands of dollars on Facebook trying to advertise just to everybody, but you're actually directing your ads like to the people that you met. And when they're scrolling through their newsfeed and they see your face, then they're like, holy crap, I know that person. And it just makes it so much more effective and cost effective than just going in online right off the bat. Another thing too is that connection, that's sort of been like the cornerstone. It's been the foundation of our success with Paradise Fears, has been that connection. And there's a lot of different ways you can connect with people. Well, first on, like when it's your first point of connection, I really think that this method, this strategy is incredible. Other things that we've done that were really, that really helped foster that connection were things like house shows. Playing live in general is just one of the best ways you can form a connection with a crowd. So that's why I think even if, you want to do mostly stuff online, if you do shows, that's how you really connect. I think if you're here watching this right now, that's probably what you want. I mean, this thing is called tour hacking. Like, you probably want to learn how to tour. So you probably have that same kind of feeling that I do, when you get out on a stage and you start playing your songs and you can look out the crowd and, people are singing along. it just kind of gives you goosebumps, and it's just awesome. And it's about that connection. That's what it all comes down to. And this is just a great way to build that initial connection, that just like plant that seed. Okay, so just really quickly, I wanted to share my screen here and show you that like I'm a real person, and kind of show you some stuff with Paradise Spheres. Sometimes when I tell people this story, they're literally like, I don't believe you. Like there's no way that happened. You're a Russian robot. This is fake news. So I'm just going to share my screen quick and like Google, Paradise Spheres, and hopefully nothing too embarrassing comes up. Okay. Boom. All right. So this is my band, Paradise Spheres. You can see a Wikipedia page. This was the album. This was when we were doing this tour hacking method. The peaked at number 2. You can see, yeah, this is when we were working at Hy-Vee to raise the money. We set out following other pop rock tours, like I just talked about. Basically, you could have learned all of this just by going to our Wikipedia page. Don't you wish you would have saved time and just come here? Yeah, so there's all that stuff. I'm Michael Walker. I'm the keys guy. Yeah. Okay. So one of the strategies that we used later on was doing a lot of music videos. Love ads. Let's see. So here's our YouTube channel. Here, this video was awesome because this was a video we didn't even do. Someone made it for Battle Scars, and love these ads. And like, this stuff all came after we did the tour hacking thing. Like, I think part of the reason that this even worked was because we had that initial connection and we had those roots. Doing this is like, it's like sowing a seed and building the roots, and then other stuff can kind of branch out. So I would consider this on like as part of the branches that started to branch out. Yeah. So I mean, we're real people. I promise. We're not robots. Unless we created all of these accounts just to like try to fool you guys. That didn't happen.
All right, so I made a little PowerPoint presentation for you guys where I'm going to teach you step by step how you build a fan base. All right, so how to attract a fan base. So the way I want you to think about this is kind of like a funnel where you're going to start at the top with a ton of potential fans who would like your music, and they'll go through some sort of system or process where they meet you and you connect with them, and eventually you offer your music to them to buy, and if they do, then they're officially a fan. Okay, so step by step, what this looks like is, number 1, you got to find out where your ideal fans hang out. So in order to do this, you really need to find out who is your ideal fan in the first place. So who is going to enjoy your music most? What types of other music do they listen to? What are some of their favorite bands? And do they attend concerts? Whose concerts do they attend? And also, where do they spend time online? Which artist pages do they follow? And all of this is really valuable because, not only is it great for tour hustling, you kind of clarify who's going to enjoy listening to your music, but it's also great for later on if you want to do some sort of online advertising, which is really important. Then finding out where they spend time online and which artists they follow is gold. Okay, so step 2 is you're going to have to introduce yourself. You're going to have to meet them and introduce yourself in some way. And from that point, you got to connect with them and build rapport. So you might do that by having some sort of conversation and finding common ground between them. So if you both like the same kind of music, that's common ground. And you'll really be able to connect with them by being authentic, by being yourself, and by sharing your music. And maybe sharing some sort of personal stories that help people connect with you. Okay, so the next step is you have to make them some sort of offer. So maybe it's for your CD or maybe it's for something else. But a lot of people get kind of tripped up on this stage because they really don't like selling. But the thing is, you got to think about it. You got to reframe how you think of of selling something. First of all, you shouldn't be selling something if you think that it's not worth what the other person is going to be giving you for it. Really, the whole idea of making an offer and selling something, you've got to come from a place of you feel like you're genuinely adding value to someone else's life. And only then are people going to take you up on your offer. And only then are you going to feel confident about what you're doing in the first place. Okay, so once you make an offer, a certain amount of those people are going to take you up on it. And you're going to have some money and you're going to have a fan. So the way that this all relates to tour hustling, and again, this is how you're going to explode your fan base. I can't think of a single better way that you can attract a fan base incredibly quickly than doing tour hustling and getting really good at this whole process. So when you're tour hustling, one, you're going to want to research and choose the right tour to follow. So you're going to have to find out who's going to be most receptive to your music. And maybe a way that you can do that is you can think, who would be my dream tour, or who's my music's biggest inspiration? Who would enjoy listening to my kind of music? Two, you're going to introduce yourself to the fans in line. Three, you're going to connect with them. So you're going to share your music, you're going to have a conversation, you're going to build some sort of rapport, and you'll make a connection. And then once they listen to your music, if they like your songs, then you offer them a CD. Okay, and a certain amount of people that you talk to are going to do that. As you first start out, it might only be 1 out of every 20 people you talk to buys your CD. But when you get better at doing it, a week or 2 in, then you'll keep selling more and more and getting better at it. And either way, even if people don't buy, you're connecting with so many people. Some people need to go through this process where you'll connect with them, you'll make an offer, and maybe they're just not able to take you up on the offer right now. But later on, you'll have already built the framework. You'll have already introduced yourself to them. So when you have some other connection, nurturing phase, then they'll go through that. And then when you give them the offer that time, then they'll take you up on it. So this is so incredibly valuable. I hope you guys can see how important this is. Okay, so now again, just a quick recap of the whole thing. So you got to find out, so if you want to attract a fan base, you have to first find out who are your potential fans and where do they hang out. And once you find that out, you have to find a way to get in front of them, to get your music in front of them and to introduce yourself. And after that, you can't just say, hey, buy my CD. You need to have some sort of way to connect with them. So you'll build a rapport, you maybe share some personal stories. You'll get to know them a little bit better before you even make an offer. So once you connect with them, if you think that they're a good fit for your music and that they'd actually enjoy it and get value out of it, then you make them an offer. And there's a whole lot of information that goes into how do you present an offer, how do you make a sale. But for the most part, you want to make sure that you're focused on the benefit that they're going to get from your music. So it's not about you, but it's more about them, and it's more about what your CD will make them feel like and what it will do for them. And a certain amount of people will take you up on your offer and they'll become a fan.
One of the biggest things with a lot of musicians is being afraid of, is this legal? Are other bands going to look down on me for this? Are they going to think I'm stealing their fans? Are people going to look down on me for this? And I think all of it depends a lot on your mindset going into it. If you're going into this and you're trying to just kind of take something from people and you're just trying to sell CDs, you're being kind of slimy, then that'll make all the difference. Then everyone will resist you and the band won't want you to do it. It'll be weird. Legally, there's no issue because the First Amendment actually in the United States, it gives you the right to do this because your CD is a work of art. So it's actually freedom of speech. So legally you can do it. But in terms of bands, being weirded out by it or wondering if people are weird, again, it really comes down to the way that you approach it and your mindset and whether you're being transparent and just open and honest. I know for us, our experience was always that the bands really admired what we were doing. And it actually led to us connecting with pretty much every single band that we did this on. We ended up meeting the band and we ended up creating connections and getting close with them. So no, they didn't feel like this was, stealing their fans. They weren't weird about it because they were at a place where they were successful already. And so, it wasn't, if anything, that kind of cultivates the community. And I think if people buy your CD out front, they're probably a lot more likely to actually go into the venue and buy a CD from the band they went there to see. It just I think it kind of just loosens things up. Melanie, so would this be legal everywhere under the First Amendment? If you live in the United States, then it is legal with the First Amendment. I think that there might be, like, if you're like trying to do this inside, like actually inside a venue, you might run into some issues because then you're on someone else's property and it's kind of like soliciting. I think we did it sometimes, and we kind of, because we always framed it like it was sort of this donation model where we weren't like ever forcing people, like it wasn't like a straight sales kind of thing. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to how you approach it. Like if you're not causing issues, if you're not, being slimy, then usually like, no, it's not going to be a big deal. But if you're just causing a disruption, if you're inside and, you're obviously, doing this, then I think that the venues have the right to be like, hey, like, sorry, there's no soliciting here. And that's okay. Then really the way that this works the best anyways is in lines, because in lines, people are waiting. They don't really have anything better to do. If you try doing this when people are walking around, you're going to have a lot harder time because people, when they're walking, they have momentum and you're going to be stopping them and interrupting them. That's the reason that if you ever see rappers trying to do this sometimes on the street, it just doesn't work very well. And it kind of gives you a bad taste for it because they're just being disruptive. You're trying to just walk and get somewhere. You're not trying to stop and, buy this person's CD. And they're also kind of skipping the stages. They're kind of like, buy my CD. And they're like holding it out when it's like they didn't introduce themselves. They didn't connect with you. So that's one reason that I feel like some people might, have a bad taste from rappers. But this is a totally different way of doing it. And from my personal experience and from the people that I've taught this and I've used it, it's worked incredibly well. Because busking in NYC is legal, but I have to negotiate with NYPD sometimes. Got it. Yeah, no, you're in the clear. All right, so we're just about to wrap up with day one of the Tor Hacking Workshop. It actually went a little bit shorter than I thought, which isn't bad. So now, we talked about how time is so precious. So now we all have extra time to spend. So does anyone have any questions about this whole process, about the overview, maybe about what's to come, any concerns? I would love to hear whether you want to, talk directly. We can get you on camera, or if you want to just type in the box, that's also fine.
When you're picking the tour and you go to these shows, I guess it's really important because I've done things where kind of after the show, you're handing out, we usually do download cards or something like that, has our link on it, but everyone, like you said, is in such a rush. They're kind of just out of the gates, want to get back to their car, and you don't really have that time. So when you're picking a tour, I guess one of the most important parts would be a tour that is near sold out so that there'd be an early line, right? Because it's all about people hanging around, basically with extra amount of time, right? Because I know I'm in LA, and a lot of times out here, I don't know if you've been out here, but people kind of get to the show 5 minutes before a band plays and they leave right after that band. And it's a little different outside of LA. I think people go for the show in its entirety. But I think, is that determined upon the level of the show? If it's a sold out show, I think more people will go and hang out early and you'll have a little bit more face time. So is that that's just been my experience. How do you overcome that hurdle of the rush, people getting in, getting out?
Yeah. So I can see how in LA that would be especially kind of a problem. So it definitely does work best when there is a line. Honestly, even if there's 100 people on the line, that's great. So if in LA, usually there's not much of a line unless it is a sold out show and people have to come and wait, then that is a great thing to look out for when you're choosing your shows. It is possible, like you said, you've had the experience of going out after the shows. We did that a lot of times after the shows. We would go out and do that. And sometimes it would actually work surprisingly well. We'd actually have a good day. Sometimes people would be kind of hanging around. But probably 95% of the time, it always worked better beforehand when people were waiting in line. Part of when you're kind of getting started doing this, part of what you'll probably find out through the research is sometimes there's certain venues where there's almost always a line kind of forms outside of these certain venues. And So if you're just starting to do this locally, then a lot of times you can kind of experiment with a few different venues, and you can see which ones you had the best results with and which ones like people actually really lined up for it beforehand. There's also and tomorrow when we're kind of diving into the nitty gritty and like exactly what do you say and how do you choose the right show. I'll show you some like tools you can use. For example, like Google Maps has a great feature where usually when you look up a venue on there, you can kind of see the capacity, you can see pictures of it outside, so you can kind of make sure that it looks like, you know, it kind of opens up on the outside, so there's actually going to be a line. So there's ways that you can kind of predict, and you can see, is this going to be worth going and doing this? But to answer your question, I think it is important. As much as possible, you want to make sure that there is a line that you can go meet people at.
Awesome. Thank you. Great
Yeah,
material.
no problem. Awesome. Okay, so that kind of wraps up what I had planned for day one. If you guys have any questions or like that kind of pop up in your mind afterwards, feel free to shoot me an email at michael@modernmusician.me. And day two, some of the stuff we're going to cover, like we just talked about, are one, you know, we're going to get really nitty gritty. We're going to deep dive into it. So how do you actually choose the right shows that people are going to be lining up at? And then we're going to talk about how do you choose like who to approach. So like if you see a big line of people, where do you start? Do you start at the front of the line or the back of the line? You know, who do you start with? Are there any like sort of tips? Like what do you look out for when you're going to talk to people? And exactly what do you say? Like when the very first thing that you say to them is probably, there's a couple of key moments, I think, in the conversation. And two of the biggest key moments, I think, are one, the introduction, like the very first thing that you say to them makes a big impact because it kind of, shades the rest of the conversation. So I'll tell you exactly like the best thing that I found that, you know, I think I could probably talk to 99 people and all of them it would be a great introduction. Like they wouldn't be weird about me talking to them because of the way that I used to approach people. So I'll tell you exactly what that is. We'll talk about throughout the conversation. I'll actually just give you I was sort of like a comedian. Like after a certain point, like I did it enough where like I kind of had like a general outline of what I used to say. And then during the connection phase, like a lot of it would kind of be specific to the person I was talking to. I would really ask a lot of questions and learn about them. But I'll tell you exactly kind of my outline. And the second like really important part of the conversation, I think, is the moment that you transition to selling a CD. You know, like exactly what do you say? How do you position it? And then how do you follow up with people afterwards? Tomorrow, I'm also going to have a lot more of this tech stuff figured out, so that'll be nice. Okay. So the last thing before our call tomorrow, I know that some of you, you know, you might be working or you might just not be able to make it, and that's okay. The way this is going to work is I tried to record this entire thing. When it froze, it stopped recording for a little bit. So we're going to miss a little bit there, but I'll have the replay uploaded, and I'll send out a link as soon as possible so that if you have, you know, bandmates, or for everyone that wasn't able to actually make it here live but signed up, they can watch it. And there's going to be available till Monday. So, and then once after Monday ends, part of the reason I'm doing this right now is because, first of all, like I want to get more success stories with you guys. Like I more than anything, like I want you to go out and do this and to report back to me and be like, yo, dude, this was incredible. Like we ended up doing this. We sold 10,000 CDs, and look at us now. Because then when I create more of a course from this and it's more structured, again, this is sort of like a beta class. When it's more structured, I would love to have, you know, examples of you and be like, you know, check out my friend Jonathan, who, you know, he was at this place and then he started doing this. He sold 10,000 CDs. Part of what we're doing here, I'm recording it, and then after Monday, I'm going to create like a little mini course out of the recordings. So they're going to be paid. So it's going to be available till Monday. I know some of you might not be able to make it tomorrow or the next day, and that's okay. Just you can find the replays if you need them. We're going to do more Q&A stuff over the next couple of days and help you directly. And for tomorrow, kind of the big, I don't want to call it homework because that kind of sounds lame, but it basically is like, you know, homework is just really simple. Just make a list of between 5 and 10 bands that you're really influenced by. that would kind of be like a dream tour for you. So if you can just imagine like 5 to 10 bands, you make a little list that if you could choose anyone to tour with and it was like a magic wand, you could do it, who would those bands be? And just make a list of them. And that will kind of put us in a good position for tomorrow when we start diving in to actually doing this. So yeah, thank you so much for being a part of day 1 of this workshop. Awesome. Lewis is definitely going to do this. Very cool. My only question is, will you listen to my band's music? I post a SoundCloud link. I'll listen to your music. Cool. All right. Have a nice rest of your night. We got done about half an hour earlier than I was thinking, so that's cool. If you have any other follow-up questions, shoot me an email at michael@modernmusician.me. And otherwise, I'll hope to see you tomorrow at the exact same time. All right. See you guys.